Hi, welcome to Little Dungeon Studio. My name's Kent. My friends and I love to get together in the studio and play Rocksmith. We can jam on Rocksmith. We can learn new songs. It's one of the greatest teaching tools out there for people that are learning guitar, learning bass, rhythm and lead guitar, and we just go for hours. That's a lot of fun. One of my buddies is actually leaving town. He's leaving the state, and he wants to be able to do what we've been able to do in the studio with Rocksmith. Rocksmith's a really great application for learning, as I said. But one of the things that happens is you plug your guitar into Rocksmith, and it plays the tones of the song you're playing, and that's awesome. But sometimes in some of the mixes, your guitar gets lost. You really can't hear it very well. So a lot of people like to have an outside amp and use one of the many awesome tools that are available today, such as the Helix from Line 6, to model the exact sound of the song that they're playing, which Rocksmith does so well, but really be able to have control of the guitar. So we are able to do that here in the studio because we have a lot of those tools. We obviously have amps and things like the Line 6 Helix. He'd like to be able to do that without having the studio. So we decided to put together a solution for that, and my suggestion to him was that he use a mixer in addition to his PC that plays the Rocksmith application to create that kind of environment into his headphones. He'll be living in an apartment. He's not going to be able to jam out on the amps. And here comes one of my little friends to help me out with this production. What this video is about is how to use Rocksmith with a mixer and some outside gear to be able to have control of your mix of the instrument that you're playing on top of what's coming out of Rocksmith. So let's take a look at how you do that. Okay, for our mini studio setup, here are the 4 pieces of gear that we're primarily dealing with. First, we have a mixer, which is a Yamaha MG10XUF. It's a nice little mixer. It's got 9 channels, really 4 separate channels, then some stereo channels, and a USB channel you can bring in. Then we just have our laptop, and on the laptop I have installed our Rocksmith program, and it's up and running, and it's just pretty nominally configured, and it's, the audio is currently configured to come out the earphones outlet, standard mini jack. So that's a pretty straightforward configuration. This is a Helix, but it could be any outboard guitar appliance, which allows you to, it could be any kind of stomp box or anything like that that takes an input from the guitar and allows you to send output to another device like the mixer. And then finally we have an Ibanez guitar, and that guitar has a splitter output, and the 2 outputs from the splitter, which we'll look at a little more closely later, one is going to the Helix, to the guitar in on the Helix, and the other is going to the special Rocksmith jack, which goes into the USB port of the laptop computer right here. So that's the special cable that comes out of Rocksmith. So as mentioned, one of the things we're trying to accomplish is both having the Rocksmith output for your guitar as you play it, yet being able to also separately control your own guitar sounds, and that's what we're using the mixer for. So on the Helix, we just have 2 cables really involved. The Helix is a complex device, but we've only got 2 cables involved. One is the guitar in, which is coming out of the Ibanez, and the other is the left mono out. Obviously you can take 2 separate cables out to go to the mixer, but we're just doing a single channel to the mixer, and that's out of the left mono on the Helix. So on the mixer, you can see we've got 4 cables going in here right now, and in a different configuration that I hope to get to on the same video, we'll try the USB output from the laptop, which allows you to take a USB signal out of your computer, put it into the Yamaha mixer as a USB, and that gives you a nice option. Alright, so that's our basic setup. As mentioned earlier, this is the splitter that comes out of the Ibanez. So this goes into the regular output jack for your electric guitar, and it's splitting it into two signal paths. One of them is, in our case, going into the computer through the special Rocksmith cable that's provided with Rocksmith or available on Amazon. And the other is what we're putting into the guitar in on our Helix. On the Helix, that's the other end of the cable coming out of the guitar. It's going into the guitar in, 1/4 inch input. And then we have several outputs we can use to get to the mixer, but in this case we're just using a simple 1/4 inch output for left mono. And if you wanted to use the stereo output for whatever reason, you can certainly do that by using both the left and the right channel cables. Alright, we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about the mixer. Now, this is not in any way intended to be a tutorial on this particular mixer. We'll talk about some specifics, but basically we're taking output from our guitar and from our PC that's playing Rocksmith, and we're putting it into a mixer so that we can have control of our guitar's sound and volume, pan, etc. So that we're not just stuck with what Rocksmith gives us back for our guitar. I mentioned in an earlier segment that we had 4 cables coming into the mixer. We actually have 3. And in a later configuration we'll only have 2. So on the first channel here, that's where my guitar is coming in. And it's coming in out of the Helix, so it's a line level output out of the Helix. And same thing with the 2 channels that are coming out of the PC. So I'm using 3 channels total for this whole operation. Now, a couple of things that might be important on any mixer, but on this particular mixer, is a couple of switches that you'll want to work with to make sure you're getting the right sound. There's a lift button here on each channel that you can use to remove some extra noise that you might have based on the signal. If you're using the line level inputs, then you've got those volume knobs here that give you the basic control, and then of course you'll be able to use your sliders for additional control on each channel. Now, for this particular mixer, we want to basically just use the regular stereo output. So you're going to use the on function for each channel, and then you're going to turn on the stereo channel over here as well. Now, typically you're not going to want to use effects, which is this channel, and then you can control effects here, and that's a typical setup with many mixers. My buddy Todd normally uses his headphones, so we've got a pair of headphones plugged in here as well. But you can you have many different output capabilities with this and almost any other mixer. So again, what we're after here is independent control of your guitar, and when you're using something like a Helix, you can apply many effects and amp models and all that kind of thing. But we're going to have separate control over that guitar's sound as opposed to the rest of what's coming out of Rocksmith. So that's a little bit about how we have this set up here. There's a couple of gotchas with this and any other mixer. You know, again, you don't want to have the effect set up. You always want to be very careful about your volume levels. And whenever you start working with the setup, you want to make sure your faders are down. You want to keep these volume controls for line level input at the minimum and bring them up as you understand, you know, how your signal's coming into the mixer, so you don't blow out your ears or any of your other equipment. This little Yamaha mixer seems like a nice little piece of equipment. It's pretty straightforward to use. The one thing that took me a minute was the documentation kind of said that these on were just for the effects, so I couldn't get any signal out except for the pre-fader signal, which is controlled, by the way, by these small buttons on each channel. If you want to hear your pre-fader signal, just your signal coming in, you can turn those on, and if you do, this light over here will blink, because the only thing that's going to come out of your headphones from that point forward is the pre-fader signal until you turn that off. And if it's turned on for any channel, even if the channel's not being used for anything, you're not going to hear anything but that channel until you turn that off. So that was a little bit of a gotcha with this particular mixer. That aside, you know, pretty typical type of mixer functionality. I mentioned earlier that the output from the laptop was coming out of the earphones or headphones jack, and this kind of standard little mini jack for that purpose. But I do have a special cable here, and we'll follow it down to the other end of the mixer, but that cable splits the earphone or headphones signal out of the laptop into two separate cables. And in this case I got one that takes us into 1/4-inch jacks so that I can have a left and a right on the mixer. Now this mixer, like many, has a lot of different ways that you can bring such a signal in. You can see we've got RCA jacks here, and you can get lots of cables like that from your local Guitar Center or whatever store you buy at, or online, of course, or on Amazon. This particular mixer, like many modern mixers, is going to have that USB, and we're actually going to configure that and set that up later. But I just want to point out that these two cables are not coming from two separate outputs on the laptop. They're coming from a single output that was split into two separate lines for the use with the mixer. Now you're also, in this case, you're going to pan the two channels. The left and the right need to be panned left and right, obviously, in order to actually separate the signals in your ears. So just wanted to take a second and point out that configuration here. Okay, that's our brief setup tutorial on how to use Rocksmith with the mixer to get the guitar sounds that you want. Obviously, I would love to give you a lot of examples of that. Unfortunately, it's difficult to put the headphones on the camera, but it works very, very well, and I'm sure that you'll enjoy being able to get your own sounds and tones along with your Rocksmith mix. From the little dungeon, Kent here saying thanks for checking this out.